Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint podcast number 285, recorded live Monday, March 21st, 2016. I am your host, Todd Klindt. I like to think of this as the SharePoint Madness podcast or episode. It's also like the second day of spring, which is very exciting. It's always good to be here this time of year. Very exciting. And I think the anniversary of the podcast, I think we're like 7 yeyears ago in March. I think it was March something of 2009 when I started this whole mess. So March is a very exciting time. But I'm here. You're here. We're all here. It's very exciting. The reason I'm here and the reason I'm able to keep coming back here is because of the folks at Rackspace. So go out to sharepoint.rackspace.com and find out about all the great SharePoint products Rackspace has. You can find out there we've got lots of things out there. And while you're out there, if you're using SharePoint, you're probably using other Microsoft products, because there's one or two other Microsoft products out there besides SharePoint. None of them are quite as nice, have the class and sophistication that SharePoint has, but they're out there. From what I understand, those people are good too. But you can find out about what we do at rackspace.com/Microsoft to find out about the lesser, yet still exciting, I guess, Microsoft products that we support. So go out there. And then, of course, on the internet, I have a small presence out there. I have ToddKlindt.com, you can go to for my blog, at Todd Klindt on Twitter, at Todd Klindt on Instagram, though as far as I know, I've never posted a single thing there, and I follow like 7 people, but I'm out there, mainly because I don't need somebody squatting on that on Instagram and then tweeting out or whatever, Instagramming out pictures of their butt or whatever. That looks like there's probably 3 or 4 of the people in the chat room, the hooligans, that would think of that. But I'm out there also, so you can find out all about me out there. So the next part of today's podcast, the production notes. I got everything out for last week's podcast, 284. Didn't do the blog post till this morning. I kind of forgot about it. I was off last week. I had tickets to the NCAA games in Des Moines last week, so Thursday I was out and was doing that. I can schedule the YouTube video to be published. I can schedule the tweet about that. I can't schedule the blog post, and so I just kind of forgot about it, and so I got that out a little bit late, but that's good to go. This week, one of the production notes is we're having a guest. We've talked about that, how that's going to be coming up, and today is the fruition of all that, of moving this to 4 o'clock, and all that is today. Next week, I'm going to be on the road. I'm going to be in San Antonio. I think I'm going to do the podcast from the castle, same time, 4 o'clock. I need, there's some logistics I need to figure out there, get a room and all that. But plan on that. Follow me on Twitter. That's where I'll be announcing all those things. If not, we'll run a rerun, something like that. But that's everything for the production notes. Okay, for the topics, we've got a couple of topics that I want to cover before we get to the big exciting part. The parts you're all here for, the meat. Toni, our guest from Croatia. But a couple of things I want to talk about first is, this is something that comes up once in a while in discussions and all that, is licensing for Office 365, SharePoint Online, Exchange Online, and how that matches with on-prem licensing and things like that. And so I finally got a good link that talks about that. It's a couple of years old, but I just was bumping around and found this link. Basically, the story is that if you have Office 365 licenses, so a user license in Office 365, that also gives you a license to an equal workload running on-prem. So this is for Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and Lync Online, our Office 365 favorites. The phrase that Microsoft uses in this document is a user subscription license for an Office 365 service. That user is also licensed to access the equivalent workload running on premises. So number one, thanks for not saying on premise, because that's just wrong. It's on premises. But that's something that we talk about. When I'm talking to people who have on-prem SharePoint and I'm trying to convince them to go hybrid and to try, Office 365 and things like that, licensing and cost always comes up, and this is one of the things that I bring up. That there's a pretty good chance, whether you know it or not, you're already licensed for Office 365, because Microsoft, in their zeal, in their zest to get people out to Office 365, they sort of lead with this Office 365 license thing, even if the customer wants on-prem licensing, because they say, hey, you buy this Office 365 license, you get that on-prem license that you're looking for, and you get Office 365. So there's a good chance that you're licensed for it. This license, the Office 365 license, obviously gives you access to the current version, so SharePoint 2016, Exchange 2016, all that kind of stuff. Also, all the earlier versions. So that's kind of nice. So you got, for anything you got on-prem. This doesn't cover server licenses, which are a not insignificant part of this. So it covers the SharePoint CAL. It does not cover the SharePoint server license. You still need one of those to install SharePoint. It also doesn't cover any other licenses that users need, like Windows licenses, SQL Server CALs. I'm not going to pretend to be a licensing expert, but it doesn't cover those. And so this is a good thing. So check that out if you've got that. And so here's a couple of examples that are kind of germane to the kind of people that I talk to. If you've got somebody who has an Office 365 E1 user license, that means they are also licensed for SharePoint Standard Server on-prem. So you don't have to buy two CALs. If they have an E3, E4, and I assume E5, though the document doesn't have it, user license in Office 365, then that means they're also licensed for SharePoint Server Enterprise on-prem. So kind of a good thing. Again, most of the time when I've seen this, it's with on-prem customers and me trying to say you should try Office 365 and them saying, but I don't want to pay for it, blah, blah. And like, well, check with whoever, you might already be paying for it. But the document's there. It's on blogs.techneck.com. Of course, the link for that will be in the show notes, which if you're watching this on the webpage is below. YouTube, it's below. And you can get to the show notes. If you're listening to the audio version of this, you can't tell the cool shirt I'm wearing that has a cat eating noodles out of a bowl with chopsticks. But if you're listening to the audio version, go to toddklindt.com/podcast285. That's the show notes and all of that. In the chat room, Mark Chrisman's also talking. Yeah, there's some other ones, and the chart's pretty easy to look at. If you look on the right-hand side of the chart, they have all the different Office 365 licenses, and then it shows you on the left-hand side what that gives you access to. So if you've got just SharePoint Online, all that. If you have some of the lower ones, like Kiosk version, they don't come with an on-prem license, but honestly, we probably don't care a whole lot about that. So I've come on board. I've talked about it for the last few months now. This cloud thing, it's real now. This hybrid thing, it's real now, and we gotta go try getting out there. On-prem is safe and cozy and makes us feel good, but the cloud world's coming. We got to embrace it. We got to get comfortable with that. Another fun link that I came across last week was one about updates and configuration options for SQL Server with high-performance workloads. And this is another Microsoft document. It's a support document. And basically it talks about, like the title says, configurations that you should have if you have high-performance workloads in SQL, and then patches. So patches fix specific things. And it's really nice. It's just kind of a list of things. It's got event IDs. If you're getting this event from SQL, then change this configuration. If you're getting this event, it's this patch, things like that. And so this is nice because SharePoint obviously uses SQL. This is no news to anybody who listens to this podcast, except maybe my mom, but I'll explain it later, Mom, I promise. But SharePoint can be kind of a heavy user of SQL. It can do a lot of, you got a lot of content in there. It's also not the smartest user of SQL. It does some things that make SQL DBAs just shudder when you explain it. And so using some of these tricks are good to get more performance out of your SQL boxes. So look that over. It's for SQL 2012 and SQL 2014. And again, you can just kind of scroll through. It talks about how to configure transaction logs, all kinds of things like that. There's probably one or two bits in there that can improve your performance for your SharePoint box for little or no money. SQL's kind of expensive, but these are all probably free fixes. So again, that link will be in the show notes. And I threw that out in the chat room. Okay, I have stalled enough. Those of you who have the audio podcast are also lucky. In the chat room now, they're trying to talk me into taking my shirt off and any number of other inappropriate, not necessarily family-friendly activities. just be glad you're missing out on that. Sometimes the chat room is just it's a scary place. I'm terrified having it up myself. Those guys, they get a little spare time on their hands, idle hands, work of the devil, all that. All right, so coming up, right, so this point right now, I mentioned several months ago, probably over a year ago, that I wanted to move the podcast from 8:30 Central, 8:30 p.m. to 4 p.m. for a number of reasons, scheduling things for myself, but also because I had some European folks that I wanted to bring in, and 8:30 p.m. Central was some ungodly time, like 3 or 4 in the morning, Thursday morning or something like that, for folks in Europe. And honestly, this podcast isn't that great that I could talk anybody into coming in that time. And so this was part of the reason that I wanted to get it all moved. And Toni, and I'm not just saying this to butter Toni up, Toni Frankola was one of the people that I had in mind when I said that. He's one of the Europeans that I've talked about. And so Toni Frankola, a friend of mine, known him for years, SharePoint MVP, but more importantly, one of the founding guys of the SPTechCon utility. And so I invited Toni to come on. A few folks in the chat room have SPTechCon. I use SPTechCon. I love it. And I wanted him to come in and tell us a little bit about it. So I'm going to try to unhide him. All right, so Toni, you are shown. Toni, say hello to the crowd.
Hello, people.
Hi, Toni.
Hello from Europe.
Yeah, so I did a terrible job introducing you. I didn't have any prepared notes. So why don't you tell everybody who you are, where you're at, and what you do.
My name is Toni, and as Todd said, I'm Office 365 Server MVP. They changed the names recently, but I was SharePoint MVP for years, and I'm one of the co-founders of Acceleratio. We are the company producing various tools, one of them being SPTechCon, which should be familiar with you SharePoint people. It is a tool for SharePoint admins that helps them manage their infrastructure and servers and stuff on SharePoint. Hello, people.
Excellent. So Toni, how long ago did you come up? When did SPTechCon come out? Because I've got a funny story about that.
Well, I think the initial prototype was made in 2009, maybe early 2010, and I think we released it in 2011, if I'm correct. I might be wrong for a couple of years or something like that.
And originally it was like on Codeplex or something like that, wasn't it? There was something.
No. We were always like a proprietary software, but there was an additional script on Codeplex made by Shazai. He's from Australia. He's also SharePoint MVP.
Okay. So the thing that I remember, so again, I've known Toni for a long time, and we meet at MVP events and things like that. And I remember the first time that I saw the SPTechCon and talked to him about it was around the time that SharePoint 2010 was coming out. And I don't remember if it was RTM'd yet or if it was just in beta, but it was after I'd heard that everything was moving over to PowerShell. And I'd gotten my fingers dirty with PowerShell. And it was at that spot in the Dunning-Kruger thing where I'd learned a little bit of PowerShell, but thought I knew everything about PowerShell. And I remember seeing your tool and thinking, that thing has no value. Everything his tool can do, I can do better in PowerShell. And I set out for months trying to make good on that ridiculous claim. And then at some point after it had been out for a little while, so I don't know if it was the original version or one of the updates, I saw the tool for the first time and I'm like, oh my God, I am such an idiot. I've been wasting my time trying to do all this myself. SPTechCon is just a tremendous tool. So why don't you tell the folks a little bit about what the tool does? Sell them on it.
So when I was doing client work for clients and consulting for them, there was this problematic part of every project, and that was doing documentation. And we all know that there's like I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of settings in central admin, and at the end of the project, you need to produce some kind of a document. So if you are getting money, you need to produce some kind of a document. So I was doing that by hand, and there was no PowerShell at that time because it was still SharePoint 2007. And I said to myself, we have such nice beaches in Croatia. There is no point in doing this over and over for hours. So I was looking into APIs, and I realized that we could pull out a lot of these things automatically, even without PowerShell, just using .NET. And that's how the tool came to be a documentation tool. And then over these years, like 5 or more years now, we realize that there are many other things that people are struggling with. So there's like, we check your best practices now. So many people got into SharePoint by accident. So they're managing large farms and that they might not be educated enough to do that. So we provide them with analysis of their configuration, and we give them the ability to make sure that they are running according to the latest best practices. So this makes their lives a bit easier. And we also do a lot of permission management because there are large farms and large site collections that need to be managed. And by automating some of the stuff, we help people to distribute permissions more easily, to manage permissions more easily.
Yeah, and somebody noticed that I got dark in there. I'm not sure what happened. I mean, my camera screwed up. But I'm just as good looking in the dark as in the light, so don't fret about all that. Yeah, so the thing that I mean, there's many things to love about SP.kit. The thing that I liked as a consultant, that it was a great tool, super easy to use, almost as easy as next finish to use and run against the farm. But then it produced this incredibly professional looking report with as much or as little information as I wanted to provide to the customer. And I remember running it a few times and having some customers like it, and honestly, nobody read through it. But like Tony said, when you're charging all this money and doing all this stuff, they expect some document from it. Whether they're actually ever going to look at it or not, giving this PDF gives some kind of legitimacy to the whole mess. So. And I remember, and I don't know if I talked to you directly about this or somebody else, but I remember running some reports and saying, man, it would be great if I could customize this. You should put this in the next version. And you're like, no, dummy, it's already in there. Do the thing with this. And we thought about this years ago.
Yes. So one of the key things that we wanted initially is to have the ability to produce documentation in a Word document format so that people can customize that. And for many people, they just produce like 1,000 pages of documentation. They give that to the client, and that's it. That goes with the bill. So it makes sense for a lot of people.
Yeah, I've been a big fan. I'm trying to think of some of my other favorite parts, because the more I have used it, the better. The more stuff. So like one of the things, you can have it print out all your site collections, but yet for a site that has a lot of site collections, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So you can put, I don't know, I'm a big fan, and it is an easy way to do documentation. One of the things that I have used it for is sizing and budgeting and things like that. So once you get it installed, you can run it once a month, you can do it whatever, and then it's easy to compare because the product has a farm compare feature built in. Yes. So you can compare month to month. You want to tell them a little bit about that?
So over the years, we have been approached with a number of clients running multiple environments, like test, development, staging, production, user acceptance testing, you name it. And in many cases, people don't have exactly the same farms. So I don't know, a developer farm is usually just one server, and then you get to test, it's maybe 3 servers, and then you get to production, it's 27. And then people want to compare and see, okay, we have a web front end in test, it's only one machine, and then we have 14 web front ends in production. Are these the same? So we can help them by mapping these different servers, different server names, different URLs, different domains, different people, service accounts and stuff, help them to map these accounts and to streamline the, let's say, the control and the migration and the planning of future farms. And what you mentioned, we also do snapshots. We can do them on a regular basis. So if something has changed in your farm, we can detect that over the course of period that you are monitoring the system.
Yeah, and that's a great one, because I think as SharePoint admins, we spend a lot of time keeping the lights on and running from fire to fire, but then when it comes to time to budget for storage or budget for servers, we can't really look at what our trends have been. But if you've got a tool like this that's running, you can see our data has grown over a certain amount of time, things like that, and I really like that feature of it. So one of the other features, I think you guys have it set now where the report can automatically be written like to Dropbox and some other places like that. What are some of the other unexpected things that this does?
Yeah, so many people are not SharePoint admins, and they still want to have some kind of a control. Maybe they are business users or some other people in the IT department. So we allow them to ship the reports to either email, like some people in the chat are mentioning, or we can also drop them as documents to SharePoint or SharePoint Online. Of course, it's not a good idea to have a documentation of SharePoint farm inside of a SharePoint. So if everything fails, that might be a problem, but maybe have it in SharePoint Online, because as we learned from Todd just a few minutes ago, you might have a free license for Office 365 as well.
Yeah, that's a good place for it. You know, it's been a couple of months since I've used it. I'm trying to think that you had some other integration that I really liked. And that was something, so I'm going to brag a little bit, and at least this is the way I remember it. When I was looking at this a couple of years ago, I was talking to Toni about it, and I think then you just had the option for saving it to OneDrive or something. And I'm like, I really don't use OneDrive. That was back in the dark ages when OneDrive didn't sync very well, and oh wait, that's actually right now too. Anyway, but I remember saying to Toni, I'm like, I'm a big fan of Dropbox. Could you add that in? And I think that was, you guys went back, and you're a small, agile with a little a shop, and you're like, yeah, we can throw that in. And the next thing I know, it's in there.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had to discontinue the OneDrive and Dropbox integration because their APIs were changing all the time, and so we just stick to SharePoint these days. So we can upload it to SharePoint Online, and then you can use OneDrive to sync.
Well, of course you can, right?
Maybe, yeah, of course.
Right, yeah. Yeah, but next generation client or whatever I keep hearing so much about. So trying to think, so you've got the best practices. That's another one. So I like that one. As with anything, whether we're talking about best practices or the directions my GPS gives me, they're not hard and fast. They're just kind of a guideline to kind of take me through it. But I know you guys spend some time on that.
We have a lot of suggestions just that you and I discussed like years ago, and a lot of suggestions from you came directly to the product, and thank you for that. And as you mentioned about these guidelines and numbers, and we had many clients complaining, this number should be different. I need to have more memory. I need to have different number of disks and stuff. So we just recently released the version where you can actually define your own numbers. We will give you the default ones from Microsoft or some community ones we gathered over the years, but you're free to change and say, my SharePoint needs to have 3 megabytes of memory. And it's going to work like that.
Yeah, of course it is. And so this was another one that they're bringing up in the chat room, that it can generate auto SP installer XML files. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's new. We released it a couple of months ago. So and it's very handy when you need to provision new farms. So we are just preparing some SharePoint 2016 test farms, and I'm like, this is so easy now. You just create a template and you copy it with AutoSP installer, which is a great tool and very handy to use. So I think life of every administrator is much easier today than before before Brian made AutoSP installer. So it's a breeze to install SharePoint, at least for test and production development farms.
Yeah, and there's some discussion about whether people should use AutoSP installer for production. I'm fine with it. I don't do it myself, but I don't mind when people do it. But one of the things as a SharePoint admin that I hate, and I think it's universal, every man, woman, and child hates it, is documentation. And that's something that SP.kit does, but even having this XML file is another step, because not only have you documented it, but now you can easily reproduce it because it's just an XML file.
Yeah, and especially if you have many developers and everybody needs to have their own SharePoint farm, if you have an AutoSP installer input file, it's much easier to provision 20 developer machines with exactly the same replica of whatever settings that you want to have, and with all the service applications. And okay, we don't have foundation anymore, but it's much easier if you have a predefined template for all of these things.
Yeah. I had a really so SharePoint doesn't support cloning, so that's good that we've got this this option that we can do with this. So yeah, it's just great stuff. And the other thing is, I've used the AutoSP installer a few times. I'm one of those sick folks that actually doesn't mind installing SharePoint, so the automated tool's kind of sad for me. I like clicking next and running PowerShell. But in the past, when I've used AutoSP installer, one of the biggest hurdles for me was generating that XML file because it is a heavy file with hundreds of entries in it. So the fact that your tool can generate that XML file is a huge, huge help.
What they recently introduced, and that's also a great tool, is autospinstaller.com, which is a web-based interface to. I'm going to paste it in the chat room. So this is made by Brian and Ivan Yusipovich. They made a web page where you can input all the settings, and it's very convenient, especially for somebody who is trying to learn. So if you think about min roles in 2016, they already give you the guidance of how you can configure these roles and how many do you need and things like that. So it's a very, very useful tool to help you understand some background stuff going on in SharePoint, especially if if you're just learning the infrastructure part of SharePoint.
Yeah, well, that's good. So I know for a couple of years now there have been a couple of GUI tools that would create AutoSP installer XML files, but they weren't done by Brian. They were done by some other folks in the community. And I know there were some problems when Brian would advance. So I'm glad one group. All right. So I think you had some stuff. So I guess as we're wrapping this up, is there anything else that you want to tell them about the tool or anything else that you guys do?
No, visit us at www.spdocket.com, and if you have any questions, just ping us and somebody will assist you. And today, for people in the chat room, we are going to do a raffle, so you have a chance to win a license. I know many people already have a license, so maybe you can just pass it for some other people that don't have a license.
Makes a great Easter gift, Christmas present, birthday present. Everybody loves SPDocket licenses.
Okay, so as you probably know, Croatia is a company from Croatia, Europe. So we are going to have one question on that topic. So you need to tell me the name of a science fiction movie or science fiction TV series currently being filmed in Croatia.
Yeah, so a sci-fi movie, and I would say the TV show is fantasy.
Fantasy? Yeah, okay.
Yep. Currently filmed in Croatia. And so we have, how many licenses do you...
Hello?
How many licenses do you have?
I have, I can, if we had two people answering the question, we'll give 2 licenses.
All right. So movie or TV show, and I'll let that run because this doesn't make for very compelling audio for the folks that are downloading the podcast. So I'll let you handle that in the chat room when the answers come in.
Yeah, we got the first winner. It's Luis Simonetti. So if you can just paste your email and then we'll contact you with the details. And the TV series, we are still looking for the TV series. It's fantasy, very popular. People getting killed all the time.
very, very popular people getting killed all the time.
Season 6 premieres. Yeah, Daniel, you are correct. It's Game of Thrones.
Yeah. So what was the movie for the folks that are listening?
It's Star Wars Episode 8.
Star Wars. I've heard of that. I hear that's going to be big. I hear they might. Yeah, that's cool. So where in Croatia are you?
I'm in Zagreb, Croatia, which is the capital city of Croatia.
All right. Where are they filming all this stuff? Anywhere near you?
They were filming Star Wars Episode 8. The filming just ended like a week ago. The movie will be released in 2017. They were filming in Dubrovnik.
Okay, so I've been to Dubrovnik and I've been to Split. I went on a cruise and it has two stops there. I'll be honest, and Toni and I have talked about this a bunch, but Croatia is Americans. Croatia is not one of those spots that we normally think about going. We think about going to the Caribbean or Europe in general. So Croatia, Toni had talked about it 100 times and how great it was. I loved Croatia when I was there. I'll absolutely be back. The 2 cities that I went to are on the Adriatic there, and so they're old. There's lots of history. The architecture was great. I had a blast. So if you ever have a chance to go to Croatia, you should do it. I was invited. So I guess, are you part of SharePoint Saturday Adriatics?
No, it's a SharePoint Conference Adriatics. I'm just pasting the link in the I'm one of the organizers. We will be having a conference on May 31st and June 1st, 2016. So if somebody wants to combine a vacation with a conference or have an excuse to visit Croatia, this is your good excuse.
Yes, and I was going to try to make it this year. Had some scheduling issues and was not able to attend. But I've talked to a few folks that have presented there and a few folks that have gone. Nothing but glowing things about the conference and the venue and all that. So if you're
We
in
always
Europe,
try to do the best for our speakers. That's our key thing we always try to do when we have a conference here.
yep, it's a beautiful part of the world. I highly recommend it. All right, well, Tony, I've taken a bunch of your time. It's what, 10 o'clock, 10:30 your time now?
It's 10:30, yeah.
All
But
right.
it's much more convenient than 4 a.m.
4.5 hours later than now. Yeah, that was just horrible. So you guys have not done daylight saving time yet,
No,
right?
it's only 6 hours between Central European time zone and Central US, but next week it's going to be 7. So this was a great Monday to do it.
Yep. So this worked out very well. So then, with the 7-hour difference, the 8:30 time slot would have been like 4 o'clock in the morning for you or something.
Yeah,
It was
definitely.
pretty horrible.
Not very good for me, yeah.
Yeah. And so again, folks, when I was moving the podcast, this interview, Tony, was exactly the guy that I had in mind. There's a couple other Europeans I'll bring in, but this was the one, and so I was glad that I was able to finally get that to work. So, Tony, thank you so much for your time. You can stick around the chat room if you'd like. Thanks for the licenses for the folks that got them in the chat room. And for those of you that want to check out SP.kit, you can go to sp.kit.com. Also, SP.kit is the only product that I have advertisements for on my site, and it's because I'm such a big fan of it. So you can also just go to toddklindt.com. Any banners you see, just click them because that's going to take you to sp.kit and get you hooked up.
Thank you.
You bet. Thanks.
Bye.
And I will talk to you in a bit. All right, everybody. So in the chat room, treat Tony well. He was kind enough to give us some time. And again, now that Tony's off, I can say it, but I truly enjoy the product and wish him the best. Okay, so now we will move on to shameless self-promotion. Not a lot of changes. The big thing for this week, and I probably won't get this podcast out in time, but Thursday at noon, so Thursday noon Central, whatever time those other inferior time zones, but noon Central, I will be doing a free webinar with the folks at Petri.com, and you can go to Petri.com/webinars and sign up for that, and it is managing SharePoint server backup and recovery like a pro. And I will be talking for about 20-25 minutes about what you can do for disaster recovery, content recovery, and all that with the out-of-the-box SharePoint tools. And the webinar is sponsored by the folks at Veeam, and they will pick up the last half and tell you the things that their Veeam tool does. But it's all free, Petri.com. Go sign up for that. And again, this is another one of those cases where I've told those folks at Petri what a big deal I am, how the SharePoint folks just love me. So do me a favor, sign up for this so that they don't think I'm just a big liar. But that is Thursday at Petri.com, Petri.com. That is Thursday. In a couple of weeks, oh my gosh, like 3 weeks, I can't believe this, I will be in Orlando, Florida, speaking at DevIntersection.com. So you can go to DevIntersection.com and find out all about that. I'm doing the SharePoint intersection or whatever part of it, but it is all kinds of things. It's SharePoint, it is Exchange, it's SQL, it's Windows, all those things in one big conference, and it's all the big names and me, which is amazing that they let me hang out there. This is like the second time I've done this conference, but all the big names are going to be at that conference. When you register, you can get $50 off if you'd like. So when you register, there's a promotion code thing in there. It's very important. You might want to write this down. I'll wait for you to have pencil and a paper. Okay, so you're going to want the promo code Klindt. That's KLINDT, and that gets you $50 off. It gets me $50 off, and more importantly, hopefully it will get me bragging rights that I've signed up more people than Lori and more people than Jason Himmelstein. That's really, it's not about the money or the prizes. It's really just about rubbing their nose in it. So sign up for that promo code Klindt, and I will see you. Now, I will be at the event, but I had a thing back home on Wednesday, so I'm going to be dropping in on Monday, doing my stuff on Tuesday, and then flying out Wednesday. So I'll be at the conference. Come find me. If you're at the conference, introduce yourself, or even if I know you, come find me. I'd love to chat with you. Love to see what you guys are up to. That's April 16th through the 22nd in Orlando, devintersection.com. And finally, in June, June 27th through the 30th, I will be at SPTechCon in Boston. And so you can go to SPTechCon.com for that. Going to be doing some sessions on PowerShell and I think something on Azure AD Connect. Heard a little something about that tool and Azure Active Directory. I guess that's a big thing. Folks are excited about that. But I will be at SPTechCon.com doing that. And that is June 27th through the 30th. All right, folks, thank you so much for your time this week. I was thanks to Toni for showing up and lending some credibility to this otherwise questionable podcast. Next week for 286, again, I'm going to be at the castle, so I'm not sure what things are going to be looking like, but check Twitter on Monday afternoon to find out where that's all at. Thank you, everybody. Hooligans, stick around in the chat room. I'll be there for a while. Everybody else, I'll see you next week.